There's only one way to talk about this movie. Hey guys, welcome to the Video Express, where we dust off old VHS tapes and discuss all things horror, sci-fi, and exploitation. I'm Matt.
And I'm Katie.
Let's get things rolling. Katie, tell our fine listeners what movie we're spotlighting on tonight's episode.
So tonight we are talking about Black Scorpion, the 1995 Roger Corman produced superhero Batman, sort of Batman ripoff about a masked vigilante who has to save the town from an evil criminal who wants to poison the air of the city. And that's as concise as I can get with the plot at this point.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot of fun discussing the quote-unquote plot of Black Scorpion. But before we dive into
Yeah.
it, why don't we tell all our listeners what's going on today in the cinema world?
Okay, so I don't have a lot today. There's not really a lot going on right now. But I do have a birthday today. Fright Night 2, the sequel to the classic Fright Night, released today in 1989.
Woo!
I haven't revisited this one in a while, but I remember really liking this movie
Yeah,
growing up. So I think
yeah.
I think I'm due for a rewatch.
I revisited it just like I don't know, like 2 months ago or so. And I'm always that weirdo who loves the sequels that everybody else seems to hate. And I know I'm in like
I love sequels, yeah.
yeah, I'm in like the most minuscule camp when I say this, but I'm actually the person who actually prefers Fright Night 2 over the first one. Um, because I
Oh,
just
wow.
yeah, I know. And don't get me wrong, Fright Night, the original, is by far one of the most like superior, superb vampire movies ever made. But
Oh, yeah.
I'm so easily entertained. And like you wave something pretty in front of me, and I'm going to get all big googly eyed. So like Fright Night 2 has all that weird, pretty stuff to me, like the outlandish effects, the outlandish characters. Um, the lead vampire, she's fucking beautiful. So like there's so many things, and
Oh,
also
yeah.
Charlie Brewster's girlfriend in that movie, who was of course recast, it's no longer Amy from the first one. Like Tracy Lind was the actress's name. That girl was fucking gorgeous. So sorry to rant about Fright Night 2,
Mhm.
but yes, that movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a great movie. So happy birthday to Fright Night 2. And then a little something to put on your radar. So this episode is coming out on May 19th, and this Friday, May 21st, a little movie is coming to Netflix that is going to be pretty wacky, I think. It is called Army of the Dead, and it is written and directed by Zack Snyder. Which, I like, we're not going to get into a tangent about Zack Snyder, but I have mixed feelings about him. I'm not as into the comic book movies as you are, so I don't have like any strong thoughts about Justice League or anything like that. But I do
Yeah,
know that I
it's
actually really love his Dawn of the Dead movie. I love his Dawn of the Dead remake from
same.
2006. So even though it doesn't matter what I think of Zack Snyder's movies as of late. I will always appreciate him for that movie. So,
His
Army of the
best.
Dead is apparently. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was saying, yeah, it's definitely best
No, you're fine.
to not get me on a tangent about Zack Snyder, because I will probably take up the entire show talking about, I like, because I don't like love and worship the man, um but I do genuinely like his fucking, and of course I'm a comic book superhero junkie, and I thoroughly
Yeah.
enjoyed his 4 hour cut of Justice League. But yeah, I can see where he's not, not for everyone. But yeah, I'll be here all night. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, I don't dislike him either. I'm just not like his number one fan necessarily. But basically, Army of the Dead appears to be some sort of over the top zombie heist movie
Yep.
starring Dave Bautista. And the kind of plot blurb is that following a zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, a group of mercenaries take the ultimate gamble, venturing into the quarantine zone to pull off the greatest heist ever attempted. So you've got my attention in like 10 different ways at this point. And, I watched the trailer. It looks like a lot of fun. I read an interview where Zack Snyder was talking about it and basically he was like, nobody's ever let me just go balls to the wall like this. Like, no one's ever just like let me loose in this way. So I'm very interested to see what that is. So that is coming to Netflix. Again, it's called Army of the Dead. It'll be on Netflix this Friday, May 21st. So check it out. And that's all I got for news right now.
All right. Short and sweet. Well,
Yep.
here we go. You know what? Before we do this, Katie, I'm a little empty here, so I think there's only one way to talk about this movie, and that is to be
Yeah. I
inebriated. Now,
That's fair. I feel like it's that kind of movie.
it is that kind of movie. Unfortunately, and then again, this movie was my idea, but it bit me in the ass. Um, so funny story, and it's fun because I get to tell you while everybody listens. Um, I
The
picked the wrong.
sound effects along with you telling this story and sighing as I'm hearing the drinks pouring and the glass clinking is really special, I think.
So thank you. Um, so funny story. I picked the wrong movie.
Wait, what? So what were we supposed to be talking about
Okay,
today?
so well, all right. So it's not exactly like I picked the absolute like wrong movie, like completely. Like we're in the right franchise. Um,
Okay.
so I grew up with Roger Corman's '90s films. So I think I talked about that on last episode. Um,
Mhm.
all of his '90s like made for TV shit. All of his '90s like straight to video shit. Sorry, I'm in her pouring hot sauce and shit in my cocktail. Um, I grew up with. I loved all that shit. So Black Scorpion came out, and of course I watched that. It came out in '95, so I was like 12 years old. So that movie was all for me. I mean, campy, dark
Oh yeah.
superhero, nudity, like campy characters, like fucking yes, I'm all in. Um, and then they did a sequel, Black Scorpion 2, and then a couple year about I don't know 6 years later, I think they did a TV series that came out on Sci-Fi Channel that I watched, and we'll get more into that later.
Mhm.
So I own all of it. I own Black Scorpion 1, Black Scorpion 2 on VHS, and I own the series on DVD. It's been a decade probably since I've watched any of it. So whenever I think of Black Scorpion, I think of bits and pieces, I guess. And in my mind, it's in one movie. So the whole time I was doing our calendar of what to watch, I was like, oh, instead of doing like Roger Corman's like classic horror that everybody talks about, we should do like this weird, shit that nobody talks about. So of course, well, our last episode we did Terror Within. So I was like, oh, we'll do Black Scorpion, superhero, something a little bit different for our show. So I was like, fuck yeah, we're gonna do Black Scorpion. The whole time I am thinking of the second one with bits and pieces of the series sprinkled into what I remembered the first one being. So I watched it.
Oh.
I watched it today, right before we start recording, and about 15 minutes into the movie, I was like, I fucked up because the first one compared to the others, this movie's a slog. And
Oh man.
yeah, so I was like, I am drinking on tonight's episode. Usually I drink before the episode. I'm drinking during our episode tonight.
Now the drinks are pouring. They're flowing right in the middle of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was not my favorite movie that we've talked about. That's for sure. I think it feels like it feels like it feels like it like it's like a Power Rangers movie that was directed by Blunt Man and Chronic. Like, I just was waiting for, like, Jay and Silent Bob in their Blunt Man and Chronic costumes to show up around the corner, like, any moment and just wink at the camera, because it just was so like, every fight scene feels like, one of those, like, FMV video games from the 90s, like, with
Yeah.
Corey Haim in it. Like, it just was, like, I don't know, and the costumes. We'll get into all that in a second, but I did really quickly want to just attempt to go over at least the bare bones plot of this movie,
By all
so
means.
that anything that we talk about will make even a remote, like, tiny bit of sense to anyone listening, because this movie is definitely all over the place. The first thing I wanted to point out is that the way that I know that some corners of IMDb are just entirely crowdsourced and doesn't have any official sources is that this is the IMDb synopsis of Black Scorpion. A female Batman with a strong story, intriguing characters, good action pacing, and several opportunities for sex. That's it. That's the synopsis on IMDb
That
of
is
this
like
movie.
that's almost entirely wrong. I mean,
I know. It's, like, completely wrong. Everything's wrong. Like, they didn't say if anything factual
no.
in that sentence,
No, I mean, like,
except
there's
for
a
maybe
little
female Batman.
there is, like, sex in the movie, but not, like that makes it sound like this is, like, strap in, boys, like, this is, like, like, Batgirl sex, like,
Yeah,
the
there's
entire
literally
movie or something.
one sex scene, and it's the worst thing I've ever seen. I'm not gonna we'll get into it, but
I
that
don't
was
know if I'd go
hard
that
to
far.
watch. Uh It was one of the worst. It was, like, the least sexiest things I've ever seen. Like, one of the even though she is beautiful, Joan Severance is gorgeous, and, like, obviously, she's all naked in her little leather mask and all that stuff. So, like, that is fine, but just we'll get into it. But the way they shot it is all over the place. But anyway,
Uh,
so essentially, Black Scorpion. It starts with there is a cop and his daughter. It's a single dad cop and his daughter, and the daughter is, like, really into, like, the idea of being a cop. And this dad cop accidentally shoots and kills a doctor during a police shootout. I won't even get into the nitty gritty of that, because that's a whole, like, the first, like, 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, it feels like. But anyway, he kills this cop and loses his job. 18 years later, he is just suddenly murdered by the district attorney for seemingly no reason, in front of his daughter, who is now grown up and also become a cop. And she's kind of like a badass cop in her own right.
and now
So
that she's grown up, she looks the exact same age as her fucking father. Did you
yes,
notice
she
that?
does. In
Yeah.
fact, I read that the actor that was playing her dad was only, like, 2 years older than Joan Severance, and they, like, barely put any aging makeup on him.
No,
They,
hardly
like, dusted his hair to look slightly gray, and they just made him, like, a tired, like, alcoholic. But anyway, so the DA just shows up in the middle of a crowded bar and shoots him dead, and nobody knows why he did it. So, she confronts the DA in jail one night, like, after hours. She, like, goes back into the jail to confront him, and she, like, kind of threatens him, I think. And basically her boss, the chief, is not pleased by that, so she gets suspended. And then she's just disillusioned by this whole system, so she suddenly decides that she's going to become the Black Scorpion, a masked vigilante who fights crime in a tiny leather leotard and mask. So she eventually discovers that the DA had some sort of toxin in his inhaler that basically turns you into, like, a murderous psychopath, I guess. And so as she's, like, trying to figure out how that started, she discovers that the group responsible for creating this toxin is led by none other than the doctor that her dad supposedly killed 18 years ago, who is now being kept alive by some experimental tech suit. He's kind of dressed like a Mortal Kombat villain. And his name is the Breathtaker. And he wants to poison the whole air supply of the town to control it, I guess. That's pretty much it. I mean, we can get into some of the details of it, but basically he wants to poison the air of the whole town, and she has to stop him. And she also really wants to bang her police partner. And that's the story.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this episode of Video Express. We want to thank our sponsor, Lunch
Yep.
Meat.
Anyway, thanks for listening. It's the shortest episode yet.
I mean, you fucking covered it like pretty fucking
I
well.
did my best, man. I'm just trying, and I don't think any of that made sense. Like, but
I so I don't even know like where to begin. I you know me, I hate trashing movies, and I also love bad stuff.
yeah,
So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I hate this movie. I didn't love it by any means,
yeah,
like, but I after I realized I was watching the wrong one and realized that I think it's like nowhere near as good as the other entries, I still had fun. Um, but you know, but
yeah.
that's the whole
I had
point.
fun
Like,
watching this too.
yeah, it's groan worthy. I rolled my eyes so many times. I groaned out loud over terrible dialogue, terrible acting,
Oh
but
yeah.
but I know you're probably not going to agree. You might. But I something about it I found charming. I
Hmm.
I think it's
I
because
will.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna just say I'll mostly agree with you on that. It definitely has some charming parts. Like I feel like the first half of the movie is a lot stronger than like, or actually the whole first hour of the movie is a lot stronger than the last 30 minutes or so. The last 30 minutes are kind of a mess and just don't
Yeah,
really make any sense to me. So that's where it started to kind of lose me and my eyes started to glaze over a little bit. But like there's some pretty genuinely funny and just like over the top ridiculous moments, and like it's not trying to be serious. Like it's Roger
right.
Corman. Like they know it's campy, it's a made for TV movie. Like it knows what it's doing. But I think, yeah, I don't know if it's a movie I'll revisit again, but now you have me intrigued about the sequel, so I might end up watching that at some point.
So I want to talk about the sequel so bad, but I'll wait. I'll wait a little bit. So the thing here's my thing about this one. You got to remember this is 1995. So as far as superhero films go at this time, there's nothing out there really. You've got the Batman films. This came out the exact
Hmm.
same year as Batman Forever, and other than that, I mean, there's not much in the way of superhero genre, in theaters or even on on home video at this point. I think you'd have to fact check me on this one. I'm not 100% sure of the years off the top of my head, but I think like Alec Baldwin in The Shadow and Billy Zane in The Phantom. It's around about the same time they came out. But what you got to
Gotcha.
realize, like this movie, while it is like not great, the reason I think it's charming is I doubt this entire movie's budget would cover one day of catering on Batman Forever.
Oh
And
yeah.
and it's just like yeah, there's some terrible like effects and stunt work and costume and shit like that in it, but it's still charming and they fucking pulled it off. And again, like they pulled it off for like no money. I mean, money, but fucking beans when, like I said, compared to a
Hmm.
Hollywood budget. So I find it charming. I find it fun. And there's something about that era, that late '90s, mid to late '90s era, made for cable television. Like this is Showtime. Um, what came out
Yeah.
on something about that era of those types of home video, straight to primetime cable movies. They had like this grit to them that I fucking love. And I know I went on a
Yeah.
long rant about the Emmanuel series last episode. The skin flicks I used to watch late nights. Um, but even those types of movies
Yeah.
had that like that look and that late '90s like. I don't want to say grime, but it's like a grit to it. And I fucking love that shit.
Yeah.
I love that
I
shit.
Yeah. Something about it was, it like something about this whole movie felt really familiar to me, even though I didn't really spend a lot of time like flipping through Showtime late at night in
Right.
1995 when I probably wasn't old enough to change the channel by myself. But if that's relevant. Um, but like, okay, so this movie was part of Roger Corman's
Present.
series called Roger Corman Presents,
Yep.
which was for Showtime, and I just thought this was really interesting, and also just adds some kind of context for the production value of this. But between January and June of 1995, they shot 13 films for Showtime,
Nice.
and this was one of them. And he said that Roger Corman said there pretty much wasn't a day where they weren't shooting something. Like they had something going on all over constantly. So I just I don't know, no matter what you think of this movie, I just will always appreciate Roger Corman for his hustle, man. Like dude is 95. Like, okay, so we're recording this in April and he just turned 95 like a few days ago and he is still going, like he's
Still
still
going.
doing stuff. So I just think that's so cool. And this was his idea. He originally had the idea. He wanted to do like a sexy female Batman slash Spider-Man combo. And yeah, this was all his idea. So that I do appreciate. And then there's, like you said, there's definitely some really charming parts, and I will always forever be grateful for the experience of watching this movie, because then I got to hear one of the funniest lines I've ever heard in a movie, like in my entire life. Just like the delivery, the setup, everything. And it's within like the first 5 minutes of the movie. So they go to the hospital and they're showing this doctor that is about to eventually get killed by Joan Severance's dad. But the doctor, so they're like wheeling in some of these
Dr.
criminals
Goddard.
that have been injured in a car. Yeah, that guy. And he just very quickly, the first line he says when he comes on screen is, "This might be a good opportunity to use those new experimental devices on these trauma patients." And I just love that. I went back and rewound it like 3 times to watch him say it, because it's just like, it's perfect delivery. And it's just like, wow, that is just a thing, to something that they like throw out there and then don't come back to until the very end of the movie, when they
Hey,
mention that those experimental devices are what kept him alive
what do
this
I
whole time.
always say, Katie? What do I always say? You set it
Set
up
up and pay
and
off.
you
Yep.
pay it off. And
I don't know.
boy,
I feel
did
like I
they.
got ripped off.
It was so great is so that doctor you're talking about, Dr. Goddard, which is the doctor that supposedly gets killed by all right, so let's just start talking about the characters, and we're always full spoilers, so don't be fucking shocked, people. So Darcy Walker,
Yeah.
who is played by Joan Severance, is our lead. She's our Black Scorpion. So Darcy Walker's dad is a
Mhm.
cop, and he's the one who they're after these two goons that's evidently like killed some people and robbed a bank or whatever. He shot them. They've gone to the hospital, and they get back. I guess they get back up, and like there's a shootout in the hospital. Dr. Goddard comes in,
Yep.
and our Darcy's dad, Mr. Walker, opens fire and shoots Dr. Goddard. And of course, like Katie just said, like that great line of "This is a great time to try out our experimental bullshit" or whatever. What gets me is that delivery is so campy, so over the top, and that actor who
Yeah.
plays Dr. Goddard is only in the movie for what, like 3 minutes? Like it's
Yeah.
like 3 minutes of screen because
Because
he's
then
not
it's
the
somebody else in the
yeah
mask
yeah
when he's the
somebody
villain. He's
that
like a different person.
so this guy's played by Casey Simasco, who of course was in like the Back to the Future movies as one of Biff's gang member, Biff's goons.
Oh, shit.
He's
Yeah.
in one of my favorite movies, Young Guns. He was in a Mice and Men, and believe it or not, he was in the reason I want to bring up the Phantom a while ago. He was in the Phantom movie with Billy Zane. He's probably most known for
Wow.
He's most known for NYPD Blue, Law and Order. So like this guy, like A, he's not a bad actor at all. B,
Yeah.
his line of work has always been like good. It just this motherfucker, how I want to know how this happened. How he got in on
I
this movie, and like what, like did they think he was like some
I
big
would love to
deal?
know that.
Did they think he was like, I mean, like, again, they're like, I think he's a good actor and he's got a good catalog of work, but it's not like he's like, I'm not going to call him the Christopher Lee of this movie, because at this point, Joan Severance is more recognizable than him. So I don't understand like
Mhm.
the specifics of why they cast this guy.
I
But you want to hear something really sad?
I don't know. I
This
Yes.
character of this character of Dr. Goddard, aka the Breathtaker. Um, one of the reasons why I wanted to watch this movie and I thought I had it mixed up is because in the series, Black Scorpion, the series, there's like it's like a minor reboot of the first movie going on in that series, right? Guess who plays Dr. Goddard, aka Breathtaker, on the series? Adam fucking West.
No.
Yes. So
What?
yeah, Adam West, the original Batman, well, not the original Batman, but our 1966 Batman, played Dr. Goddard in the series. And for whatever reason, like I had it in my head that Adam West was the bad guy in the first movie. So you can understand my disappointment when I was like, fuck, I mixed things up. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
Uh,
Um, so let's start in order. Let's back it up just a hair. Let's start with our lead. Let's start with Darcy Walker, aka
yeah.
the Black Scorpion, played by Joan Severance. Of course, you know
Mhm.
she's known like as a model in the early '90s. She was in some films that I've seen. See No Evil, Hear No Evil, of course, with Richard Pryor and
Mhm.
with Willy Wonka, Chocolate Factory, and Young Frankenstein's Gene Wilder.
Oh, yeah.
And she was also in um, No Holds Barred with none other than Hulk Hogan. So tell me
Wha-
what you thought of Darcy Walker, aka Black Scorpion, aka Joan Severance.
Okay, well, Joan Severance is kind of a badass. Like I love her look as the Black Scorpion. Like the costume is just so over the top. I feel like Darcy as a character, when she's not being the Black Scorpion, I don't fully know how I feel about her. Like sometimes she's kind of a badass, and then sometimes, I mean, I think mostly I'm just confused at her fashion choices. Like she's just got this like 1950s like haircut with the big flip on the bottom, and everything she wears is just so weird. But then when she's the Black Scorpion, like she's just so much more badass, and like I don't know, I was a little disappointed because the very first time you see her in this movie, she's actually undercover as a prostitute,
hmm
and she's dressed. She's got this like Betty Page wig with the bangs and the long black hair, and then she's got basically the an early version of her Black Scorpion costume. But then she's got this super cool clear raincoat over top
Yeah,
of it, and she just looked so cool. Like she looked like she was about to step into like a Matrix sequel or something. So I was kind of hoping that's kind of what she would look like for a lot of the movie, but then she just was kind of, I don't know. There's like one scene where she's got like pink and clear like jelly sandals on, like something a child might wear in the 90s. Um
this is
but,
the '90s.
you know, overall this is the 90s, true, but she okay, I think one thing that I do think is really cool is that she was 37 when she made this movie,
I believe that.
and
Yeah.
I just feel like especially in, you know, especially in 1995, I just feel like if they were looking for, like, a hot badass lady lead, they would cast, like, a 20-year-old or just some really young, kind of your classically, you know, young, hot girl in that role. And so, you know, I thought it was cool that they cast like a slightly older woman because it just gives her, I don't know, it feels like she's got a little bit more like wisdom and just overall like badassness. I don't know, something about her being a little bit older I did really like.
I
But
agree
I
with
mean
you.
most of the characters.
I
Oh,
agree
sorry, go
with.
ahead.
No, you're fine. I agree with you, but I also like. So Michelle Lentel played Black Scorpion on the show, on the series, and of course she
Mm-hmm.
is the younger, hotter, of the two, and is definitely like my favorite because you need to look her up. Like that woman.
Oh, I recognize this person. Yeah, no,
Uh,
I see what you mean.
I'm not saying that Joan Severance is eh, like unattractive in the slightest.
Oh yeah,
Joan Severance, beautiful woman. Michelle Lentel, however, Jesus Christ, that woman, whew. But yeah, I agree with you that it was the '90s, so fashion choices back then.
yeah, that's
eh, But I she comes off such cookie cutter, like uh, I'm just gonna fucking say it. I'm trying to hold myself back, and I'm just gonna just say fucking boring. Like she
yeah,
just
she's real
so
boring.
fucking boring, dude. The entire time. Like the
Yeah,
only time that like she's worth watching is when she is in the Black Scorpion outfit. There's
yeah.
nothing interesting about her character in the slightest when she's just
Mhm.
Darcy Walker.
And I think that's a mistake too, because I think what they were like trying to do, like I feel like what they were trying to do is like your classic like Peter Parker, Spider-Man kind of like dichotomy, so to speak, where it's like you yourself might feel kind of like shy or like boring or whatever there is about you, but then through this persona, through this alter ego, you find your strength. But usually when they have that, even the like quote unquote boring regular version of them is somewhat interesting or has some sort of depth to them. But I mean, it's probably because of how fast they were just cranking out these movies. They just didn't, really give a lot of time to give anybody any depth. But like, I literally feel like I don't know anything about her except for she really likes her dad and she really likes being a cop, and and she wants to bang her partner, and that's literally it. I don't know anything about what she does for fun. I don't know what kind of interest she has. Like even her fashion choices don't make sense because they don't match her personality.
Personality,
So like
right?
she's wearing something kind of wacky and like goofy looking, but then she's just so boring and kind of flat. So that was just, I just feel like she just kind of fit like, here's a cutout for woman cop, and then there she is.
Well, I feel like everybody except for one person in this entire cast was phoning in their performance. Um, es-
Yeah.
Especially her co-star Bruce Abbott, who played the character of Michael Russo, her partner.
Oh
Now
yeah.
now Bruce Abbott, who I love, and Reanimator and Bride of Reanimator. He's also in Bad
Hmm.
Dreams, which is some people consider a Nightmare on Elm Street ripoff, but whatever, fuck them. And he was also in another pseudo made for cable television '90s superhero flick called The Demolitionist. I've always liked him, especially like I said, especially in the Reanimator movies. He's very charming, but he is just fucking a cardboard cutout standing in the room delivering lines. He is so goddamn bad in
Yeah.
this movie that it's almost disgraceful.
Hmm.
And I know we said we'd talk about it later, but fuck, we're gonna talk about it now. The sex scene. Um, he's to me,
I hate it.
he to me is what makes that sex scene so fucking bad because there is not an ounce of
Yeah, it's him.
enjoyment. It's not an ounce of enjoyment. There is like no like
No.
he like if you have a woman that looks like that on top of you, butt ass naked and wearing like that cool mask, and you're just laying there like a fucking I don't
He
know, like a
doesn't
dead
do
fish.
anything.
It's terrible. Who thought that was like
It's so bad.
who thought that was a good idea?
And like it's just there's no, okay, so just to give some, I'm not going to like go play by play of this sex scene, but just for some context for the listeners. So he she as Darcy tries to make a pass at him and come on to him and kiss him, and he's like not into it, because he's like, no Darcy, I like don't think about you that way. But he has already kissed her as the Black Scorpion without knowing it. He didn't know it was her, and so she basically just like breaks into his fucking apartment dressed as the Black Scorpion, and I mean, essentially attacks him. Although once she's on top of him, he very clearly is like, okay, yeah, this is happening now. But yeah, the lights are on, they're just on top of the covers. He is fully clothed the whole time and he just lays there. And then they play this like stock music, like weird 90s like kind of creepy somber piano mixed with like some weird like synth shit going on in the background, while they then start doing that weird like 90s slow-mo where they didn't shoot in enough frames per second to really do the slow-mo, so it's just like choppy and weird, and it's just it's like it's like one of the worst sex scenes I've ever seen. It's just by the grace of God, we get Joan Severance being beautiful, and there is at least that for your TNA meter. But yeah, it's a weird one, and like Michael Russo is definitely phoning it in through this whole movie. I mean, I think he's really cute and he's really charming, and I like him as an actor, but yeah, he is just not really here for most of this movie. They don't even really have a lot of chemistry. Like
There's no
he and Joan
chemistry.
Severance don't really have a ton of
No.
chemistry. And it just feels like he just like doesn't do anything either. He also fills in a cardboard cutout of cop
Yeah.
sidekick.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
It's weird because sorry, I had to let out a huge fucking sound out. So Barbara Crampton, who is one of the most gorgeous women in the entire fucking world, always has been, still is. Of course, was in Reanimator, and
Absolutely.
that was the love interest in Reanimator. And Bruce Abbott had really good chemistry with her in that movie, but I don't know, maybe it's just different circumstances, different production, different whatever. He just was phoning it in, but
Mhm.
there is no chemistry with Joan Severance, who's also a beautiful woman. It's weird. It's very weird. His acting is weird.
Mhm. What is
It's like he didn't want to be there.
what is also weird is that yeah, seems like he doesn't wanna be there, and then what I do just find interesting about, like, the writing of it all is that, I was just talking when we were talking about Joan Severance that I felt like they didn't give her character any depth at all. Like, I don't know anything about her life outside of just being a cop and being a vigilante, but then they do actually give, Michael Russo, I mean Bruce of all people, some actual like weird character development in the scene where he makes her the worst, most disgusting omelet I've ever heard of in my entire life, and he just takes a bunch of leftover fast food bits and chops them up and puts them in an egg and makes her an omelet.
I've
And
done
I just
that.
had to point that out because I I mean, I guess we've all been there, but it's also just like what like what are you doing and why is this a scene in this movie? Like why is he getting this but not our main character? Like I don't it's a weird one.
It is weird. You know, I said like everybody. I feel like everybody in this film was phoning in their performance except for one, and you know who that one is? That one is Garrett Morris, who plays the character of Argyle.
Oh yeah.
Um, Garrett Morris.
Yeah.
Garrett Morris is one of those actors that every time I see him in a movie or a TV show, like I'm ready. Like I'm strapped in. I'm ready because
Yeah.
I know that at least even if the movie or the show sucks, I know that when he's on fucking screen, it's going to be fun because he's always fucking fun. Of course,
Yeah.
you know he's best known for Saturday Night Live from 1975 to 1980. Um, for horror fans, you might know him from The Stuff. He's also well known for Martin, which was Martin Lawrence's original show, and most recently he was in Two Broke Girls, that series, and of course Black Scorpion too. But but yeah, so Garrett Morris,
Mhm.
I think he's fucking hilarious in everything he's in, and he's just like naturally hilarious. Like he doesn't even have to like go out of his way
Yeah.
to be funny. It's just his line deliveries are always fucking quirky and fun, and he's just a fun dude. And you can tell in this, just like everything he's in, that he is genuinely having fun. Like I think he comes
Mhm.
across as he likes being there. Like he is the exact opposite of Bruce Abbott. He comes off as like I'm here, I'm doing this, you know, doing this character, I'm having a good time. And the difference between him and Bruce Abbott is one of them came back for the sequel, and it wasn't Bruce Abbott. So what's that tell you?
Well, man, I also love Garrett Morris. I grew up watching SNL with my parents, and I immediately was like, "Whoa, it's that guy! Like he's in this movie." So that was really cool. He's definitely he's very obviously the comic relief in a lot of these scenes, which is nice because the dialogue in this movie is not very good, frankly. So
Right.
to have to have a little bit of intentional humor that actually lands on occasion is pretty good. I really like that he's kind of like the Alfred to her Batgirl.
Yes. Yes.
And he kind of makes her, it's just really cool that like he's introduced as like this ex car thief kind of like streetwise guy,
Hmm.
and then it turns out he's like super tech savvy, and he just like makes her all these gadgets, and he like turns her car, he makes her car like shape shift using tech that doesn't exist. Like he gives her car GPS like in 1995. So it's like I thought that was really cool that they do that. And then I have to I have to point out, okay, I did raise my eyebrows in judgment at this bit, but the more it kept happening, the more I kept laughing, which is that he, he set up the computer in her car and was like, "Go ahead and try it out. It does voice commands." And so she's like, "Oh, computer, like bring me up blah 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 blah." And he actually programmed it to only respond to
Yo.
yo.
Yeah,
So for
dude.
the rest of the movie, little Joan Severance, who is the which Garrett Morris points out several times is the whitest white girl of all time, just has to go, "Yo computer, show me the plans for the factory," or like, "Yo computer, tell me how to get to blah blah blah," and it just keeps happening, and it's so ridiculous. And I don't know, it made me laugh quite a bit.
You know what's sad though? Out of everything, well, there's a lot of things in this movie that I would have done, or there are choices in this movie that are 100% me. I feel like that's probably one of them. I feel like that's something I would fucking do. It's
Yeah,
funny
I can see that, I think, yeah.
it's funny you said Argyle is like her Alfred. I feel like he's almost more Lucius Fox, who of course is Batman's other right hand man,
Actually, yeah,
who makes gadgets and shit.
that's more accurate.
Yeah, and I also find it
That's way
funny.
more accurate, yeah.
I have never heard of anybody else named Argyle other than one other person who is also a person of color. And Die Hard, the limo driver for Bruce Willis in Die Hard, is his name is
Yeah.
Argyle, and it's just like wow,
Oh,
that's the
that's
only time
really
I've ever heard
funny.
that name Argyle, and it happens to be a person of color
You know
and a sidekick.
it's probably because, Roger Corman, like all the great artists, steals and borrows from everything, so he probably that was a pretty popular movie at that time still, I think, so
Yeah.
that wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I thought it was really cool that I kind of thought that he was going to fade into the background of the story, but he kind of like sticks around for quite a
Hmm.
bit of it and like helps her out a lot.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool.
Like I said, he comes back for the sequel, and he's just as prominent in that. So
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
good on Garrett Morris, man. Good on him for having fun and doing the damn thing. Let's we've already talked
Yeah.
about Casey's Samasco's fucking brief appearance as Dr. Goddard, who like you said, he plays the character for all of 3 minutes, but then somebody else, of course, in the costume of uh
Mhm.
Breathtaker. And just to paint a picture for you folks listening, so the villain of this movie, Breathtaker, he looks like a cross between a Cylon from the original Battlestar Galactica mixed with Darth Vader. And he's even got like a brief like so like Jesus Christ, this is where it's so groan worthy. The entire premise built around this villain and his world dominance is asthma. The entire movie and his thing is asthma because when he was shot by Black Scorpion's father, the bullets went through his lungs and now he can't breathe like a normal person. So he's got this super experimental, like basically robotic iron lung, and he got to wear this special suit. And he employs his henchmen who are asthmatics, and he has concocted a chemical that goes in people's inhalers to, like, when they inhale it, it like gives them like they're under mind control, and he's planning to unleash a gas upon the world, or at least the city, Angel City, which is what's called, to make people not be able to breathe. This entire movie is built around asthma. Like,
Yep.
wow. What is your
Yeah.
what is your
He
superpower, Breathtaker? Asthma.
asthma. Yeah, it's literally okay, so what is so funny is that it's like I'm never fully clear on exactly what his plan is, and I might have just missed it, but it seems like so in one scene he tells her that he wants to poison the air so that everyone has to okay, wait, I'm understanding it now as I'm saying it. So everybody has to wear a mask so that he won't be weird anymore. He'll be the normal one because everyone's
His
going to have to
actual
wear
line,
like a gas mask and like tubes just like him.
yeah, his actual line was, "If I can't breathe like everyone else, everyone's going to breathe like me."
Yes.
Yeah,
But then he also throws in so okay, so then he hijacks the news feed of the local news and tells everybody, I'm going to put a toxin into the air that will asphyxiate all of you. But you have until midnight to come to the breath headquarters to get a gas mask." And so he starts giving out all these gas masks, but then he put more of the toxin in the gas mask so then he can also add mind control on top of that. So not only so it's not that he just wants to make everyone have to breathe through gas masks so he doesn't feel weird. He also then wants to take control of all of them, and I don't really know what the next step is after that. But it's just kind of your classic over the top superhero kind of villain motive that doesn't really make a ton of sense, but you're just like, okay, sure.
you brought up the part where he takes over the news broadcast, and that is such a fucking lift from Burton's 1989 Batman, where Joker literally hijacks
Yeah.
the news broadcast and announces to Gotham that he's going to be, giving out free money or whatever. It's like completely 100% a clone of that scene. It's so like on the nose, it's ridiculous. But since we're talking about Breathtaker, and when we talked about, I don't know who played to him under the mask, but again,
I don't
Casey,
either,
yeah,
actually.
Casey Simasco played the Dr. Goddard before the transformation. But I do want to talk about real quickly the voice of Breathtaker, who was Ed Gilbert. And this is where I'm going to nerd out for a minute, Katie, because you're not going to recognize probably any of this. Um,
Yes.
Ed Gilbert voiced some of my favorite cartoons growing up. He was the fucking voice of General Hawk from G.I. Joe. He did voices on Centurions. He was the Mandarin on the 90s Iron Man cartoon. But most of all, he was Major Disaster on the Toxic Crusaders cartoon. So, Ed Gilbert, Breathtaker's voice, no
I've
longer
never
with
seen that.
us. But yeah, I thought I just want to throw it out there because he was a great voice actor.
No. Well, I mean the yeah, the voice of the villain was cool. And I mean, you were describing the look earlier and you mentioned Darth Vader, which in my notes I wrote down that the villain looks like Darth Vader went through like a Power Rangers filter. It's
Yeah,
like if Darth Vader got zapped into the universe of an episode of Power Rangers, that's what he would look like. I think
yeah.
if that helps in any way.
Let's talk a little bit about. I guess it was Lieutenant Walker, Darcy's dad, played by Rick Rosovich, who is probably best known as Slider from Top Gun. He was also in Spellbinder.
Mhm.
He did a very funny episode of Tales from the Crypt, which that episode was directed by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Um, but Rick Rosovich,
Oh,
he's
nice.
he's always immediately recognizable. He's one of those that guy actors, but he's
Yeah.
never he's got a great look, and he's always been physically fit. He was also in Terminator. I
Mhm.
forgot he's actually he plays Linda Hamilton's roommate's boyfriend, and Arnold fucks him up real good in that movie. But anyway, sorry. He's never been a great actor. He's never been a great actor, and in this,
Yeah.
even more so. Like this movie, I never thought he was great, but in this movie, he's just fucking flat out terrible, like so terrible.
Oh,
And
it's bad.
I thought he was bad enough during like the shootout scenes and stuff. But my God, the bar scene that takes place 18 years later, right before he gets killed, when he's trying to play drunk,
Oh, yeah.
dude, I know it's hard to play a drunk, and I've seen people like not pull it off very well, but this guy is so far beyond pulling it off. It's not even funny. Like he is so goddamn bad that he
Oh, yeah. It's like
obviously was phoning
some
it in.
community theater level. Oh, yeah. Like, definitely, like, a community theater level performance, in that scene specifically. I think, I'm kinda with you, like, he did have a cool look, like, I thought he looked the part, like, at the beginning, I wasn't sure what was gonna happen, I wasn't sure if we were gonna stay in 1975 for a while, or if this was just, like, a flashback leading up to kind of the main plot, but I thought, I thought he looked the part definitely. That whole opening like action sequence where he's chasing the guys in the cars, that was kind of cool. And they like flip the car. That's pretty cool. But I think the funniest part that he is in is when he is trying to tell Darcy as a young child, trying to tell her a bedtime story. And he just tells her the worst story ever. Like he tells her the scorpion and the frog story, which doesn't have it just ends with the scorpion stinging the frog and they both die and drown.
You know
And
what's
that's and
funny
he's literally
is
just like, "Yep, the end."
they choose that as like I guess the quote unquote like I don't know moment that where she gets the name of her alter ego, but
Yeah.
why? Like it makes no sense. There like nothing from that story is
It
like
doesn't make any sense.
no. Like if I heard that if I want to become a superhero and my dad had died but he had told me that story, I would not be like, you know what? Yeah, sure, why not? I'm gonna go by Black Scorpion. Like that's not heroic. That story's not heroic at
There's
all.
some there's some weird like through line with scorpions in this whole and not but having to do with her dad specifically because so in the so they have that flashback where he tells her that scorpion story. And then 18 years later, when he meets her at the bar, isn't that when he gives her the scorpion ring?
Yes. With it also has like weird like powers.
Well, she like adapts it later to like basically be electrified and like shoot out lightning and shit. So that was kind of cool. She like turns it into a taser somehow. But the fact that 18 years later he gives her a scorpion ring at the very beginning of the movie when she's undercover and she's like talking to her partner over the radio. I'm pretty sure he referred to her as Scorpio as if that's her like code name while she's undercover. So like there's been some weird thing with scorpions with her and her dad like her whole life and that is and they just run with it.
You know what that's called, Katie? You know what that's called? It's called grasping for
What?
straws. It's called grasping for straws.
They sure were. They sure
I
were.
I know like you said you couldn't really find out any like research and of course I don't fucking do research. But this is just my own theory. Okay? This is my own theory of why the movie was called Black Scorpion. Okay? Sorry. So Roger Corman wants to make a superhero movie because they're all the rage in 1995. Batman movies are doing good. Everybody's trying to make their own Batman movie. Roger Corman, who's always one to bank off of success, decides let's do one, but in typical Roger Corman fashion, let's sex it up a little bit. So they got to come up with a
Yeah.
name, right? They got to come up with a name. So they're trying to come up with names, and probably they're coming up with names that, let's face it, Marvel and DC have so many superheroes, it's hard to come up with a name that's not taken. So I feel
Mhm.
like somebody, maybe Roger Corman himself, or somebody was like, "Hey, I've got an idea. Roger Corman, you already own a movie called Black Scorpion, so you know you own the name. So let's just call it that." And I feel like because he actually had a movie in 1957 called The Black Scorpion, which was about an actual giant black scorpion
Yep.
monster. So maybe that's they just say like, "Hey,
Mhm.
you know what? That's a name that we can use. Fuck it, let's go with it." And then they tried to build a reason around her having that name, and they just could never fucking nail it.
So I don't know if that's true because like you said, I even got this movie on DVD and it had some special features on it, but it had really no information at all. So I don't know if that's true, but that sounds pretty like there, especially I didn't realize that the 1957 movie was a Roger Corman movie. So yeah,
Yep.
he definitely just owned that name and was like, let's roll with it. And I mean, what I think is cool, like I think the name is cool, the costume is cool. What I really liked is that she has this really long braid and it's almost like her scorpion tail. And I
Yeah,
just thought that
yeah.
was like a really cool character design. So like the whole thing being a scorpion is fine. I just think it's weird that it had such a weak through line. Like I don't even think they set up that she like I don't know. I feel like if I were doing it, it'd be something like she and her dad were like weirdly into astrology and she was a Scorpio and then she just identified with the traits of a scorpion or something. But they kind of just weakly throw in this like weird depressing bedtime story that has to do with a scorpion, which they do a setup, they do reference it like at the end of the movie. She says something like, "Well, it's just in my nature," which is what the scorpion says to the frog.
We'll just pretend
Yep.
that it was other means that she got her name. Let's fucking just
Yeah.
let's talk about not a big character, but I just want to talk about him for a minute because I always enjoyed the actor. Um, Stephen Lee, who played Captain Strickland, who was
Yeah.
every movie that deals with police has always got to have their big burly grumpy boss yelling. So Captain Strickland is
Yeah.
that character in this movie, played by Stephen Lee, who sadly passed in 2014. But he was a regular on so much television. He's also well known as Duffy from RoboCop Part Two. He was also in Ghoulies 3. He was also in the uh, the Lance Henriksen starring version of The Pit and the Pendulum, and he was in Carnosaur 3.
Oh, cool.
So he's got his ties to Roger Corman quite a bit, and also got ties to other very well known early '90s, mid '90s uh, horror genres or horror companies, I should say, like Full Moon Pictures and stuff like that. So just a quick shout out to him. Um, Again, I've always enjoyed his
Yeah.
work, and I,
He
he was pretty cool.
Yeah, he's actually one of my favorite parts of this movie just because they kept doing this bit with him smoking that was cracking me up. Like they introduced at the very beginning that he's just like your stereotypical like chain smoking cop, and the first thing they do is he's smoking next to the DA who is like inhaling
Asthma,
like
yeah,
using an inhaler because he has asthma, and the cop is like smoking a cigarette in the same room as him as he's using his inhaler and is like, man, you really got to start taking better care of yourself, like you should come work out with me on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like he's smoking a cigarette. So they do that and then it just kind of keeps progressing throughout the movie until at one point everybody in the town is getting these gas masks in like preparation of the toxin that's coming in the air, and they walk into the captain's office and he's got the gas mask on and he pulls it off and just cigarette smoke pours out of it and
yeah,
he's just still smoking a cigarette under his gas mask. So like little things like that, like I really did appreciate. I thought that was really funny. So yeah, he was a fun part of this movie.
yeah. Him and Garrett Morris's Argyle was probably the two honestly best
Yeah.
best characters other than Black Scorpion herself. But technically, I would
Hmm.
almost say they're even better than that because again, she was only cool as Black Scorpion. So So
Agreed.
yeah, so those
I
are the
did
best.
really enjoy I did really enjoy the wrestling sisters.
Yes, yes. So that's one thing I really want to talk about. I really want to talk about, um, Breath Taker. Yeah, he was definitely goofy, and like I said, like a fucking Dollar Tree version of Darth Vader. But that's something I loved about this movie, and something I loved even more so about the sequel and the series was how they basically took the campy superhero stuff of the 60s and gave it a dose of like an injection of the 90s. And that comes through so much with the villains, especially the wrestling sisters. Like I ate that shit up and I wanted more of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed that, and yeah, the sisters were fun. The group of like ninjas, I guess, were pretty fun too. I really liked that the one guy, like early on in the movie, before it kind of makes this tonal shift into a total just like cartoon. One of those guys is handcuffed in the in the station, and just all of a sudden he just kind of freaks out and he like jumps over his hands, like over his handcuffs, to put his handcuffs in front of him, and just like runs right at the camera screaming. It's very funny.
I love it. Yeah, so Black Scorpion 2, and again also the series, was literally the Batman 1966 series with your dark, edgy 90s and nudity thrown in. That's literally what they were. And that's why I was
Hmm.
looking forward, to watching this and talking about it, and then figuring out that I picked the wrong fucking movie. But yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like the second one, this like this also can be, let's not beat around the bush. It's kind of a bad movie as well, but it's way more fun
Oh yeah.
because like it is literally an hour and a half like episode of Batman 1966. The main villain
Hmm.
is like a Joker ripoff, and half of his face is a clown. He's like
Oh
he's like Two Face, right? He's a ripoff of the Joker, but he looks
yeah.
like a clown version of Two Face because one half of his body is a clown, the other half is normal, and it's so campy and over the top. Like if you just look up like Black Scorpion Part Two, I think it's called like Aftershock or some shit like that, and just look at the characters, like it's so ridiculous and so fun.
Yeah. I think that's what I wanted a little bit more about this movie, or I think one of the issues I had is it just like the tonal shifts were really jarring and didn't really make a lot of sense. So I kind of wish they'd like committed one way or the other, because like the first half of this movie kind of just feels like a semi sleazy made for TV like cop vigilante drama almost,
Hmm.
and then it just all of a sudden turns into a total like cartoon character comic book story, and I liked both of those things. It's just the sudden shift from one to the other I thought was really weird, so
Right.
I think I would have much preferred if they'd just gone full cartoon the whole time.
Yeah, I don't think they knew exactly what they wanted. Um, they
Hmm.
didn't know what direction to take. I think they were scared in a way. I think they wanted Tim Burton's Batman, right? But somewhere along the line,
Yeah.
somebody wanted Adam West Batman, and they didn't know really how to marry those two things together. So I think they were afraid to dip too much into one or the other. But
Yeah.
by the time they got to the second one, they were like, "Fuck it, let's just make it full camp, but shoot it like a dark movie," and it fucking worked. Well, I mean, I think it worked. Some people might think it's fucking terrible, but I think it worked. And the first one was just a what they say a good college try, I guess.
Yeah, like I definitely feel like I'll eventually watch the sequel, because I'm looking at pictures now, and like the costumes are crazy. Like it just looks way wackier. Like it looks like they actually did the last like 15 minutes of this movie but for the whole movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Sure did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, let's since we're talking about the direction and choices and stuff, let's talk a little bit about our director, Jonathan Winfrey, who of course did this movie and the second movie. He also is known for Excessive Force Part Two,
Yep.
starring the super hot Stacey Randall, who we will be talking about again soon when we do our Ghoulies Gauntlet season finale. But he
Yes.
also directed Carnosaur 3. How did you feel about choices made and direction of Mr. Winfrey in this movie? Which, spoiler, I pretty much already know what you think.
I felt like, okay, so again, I think we've talked about this in a previous episode. It's always hard to tell whose fault is it, like was it directing or was it editing, and how much did the director influence how things were edited. So like I don't know for sure, but I felt like a lot of things in this movie were really jarring, and everything, I feel like there were so many scenes where like things just escalated very quickly to the point that I had no idea what was going on, and I had to rewind it to be like, how did we get here? How are we all of a sudden in this chase scene, or how is all of this chaos suddenly broken out and I have no idea how we got here? Like, so I feel like it was, to use your favorite word, it was serviceable, I guess. Like, I mean, there was a movie there that I could watch and it was semi coherent, but I don't think there was anything particularly, special about his directing style. I will say that scrolling through his IMDb, what is standing out to me is how many like kids shows he went on to direct.
Uh huh.
Like, he directed a few episodes of this Nickelodeon show called Cousin Skeeter, which was like a puppet show that I watched at one point, and he directed like 5 episodes of Even Stevens
Wow.
on the Disney Channel. So that is just an interesting trajectory to me. But to bring it back to Black Scorpion, it's nothing special to me personally. Not,
So
no offense to him.
yeah, interesting that you bring up, whose fault is it? Because we talk about that a lot. Whose fault is it? Is it the director's fault, editor's fault? Sometimes even producer's fault. Most of the time, if we're talking about a Hollywood movie, it's going to fall on if it's a producer because they're always fucking sticking their fingers in where it shouldn't be. But on this,
Yeah.
in this case, we know it's not really um, Roger Corman's fault because that man, from everything that I've known about him, everything that you hear about him, he basically writes the checks, makes sure that the movie that it runs smoothly, it comes in on time and on budget or under budget, and that's all the man cares about. And he's not really one to like fuck with things. So now we're left with the director
Right.
and editor, right? So you might have to fact check me on some of this, but one of the editors, there was two editors on the movie. I can't remember who they both were. But I know that one of them was Gwyneth Gibby, who was one of the editors on this movie. She went on to direct the Black Scorpion series, right? But
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know really much else. However, the editor of Black Scorpion Part Two, he is the editor for a lot of things, most notably like he was like the editor on the entire Dexter series, Heroes Reborn, The Affair. He was the editor on the 2016 version of Blair Witch. He edited the made for Netflix Death Note movie. Like this guy kind of has gone on to like
Oh, wow.
be an editor for like way bigger and better things. Do you see where I'm going with this? And the thing the
Yeah.
thing is, the same director, Jonathan Winfrey, directed both Black Scorpion 1 and 2. And you compare the two movies, and while they are similar, like you said, the last like 20 minutes of Black Scorpion is what the entire hour and a half of Black Scorpion 2 is like. So I almost feel like Jonathan Winfrey had everything in his best intentions. That maybe since there was two editors on this movie,
Yes.
maybe that in the editing process, like they're the ones that couldn't figure out how what the outcome should be. Should this be a Tim Burton
Yeah.
esque, edgy, dark, Batman type thing, or should this be a campier, more silly? 1966 Batman type of thing, and I
Mhm.
think it got jumbled and messed up in the editing because it's always telling to me when I see credits of a movie with two editors. That always scares me that there's two
Oh,
editors on
yeah.
the movie.
That's a bad sign.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I feel like the it it could be so I think sometimes it's kind of both, like, it's like everybody's fault. Like, yeah, I think on one hand, maybe the editors just, couldn't land on how they wanted to really edit this movie. It's also very possible, this movie was being shot on a very tight timeline, not a lot of budget. It's not like they could go do reshoots if they noticed they missed a pickup, or there's, like, they might literally not have had enough footage for certain scenes to, like, do what they originally intended, and they, like I said, couldn't go
right,
back and shoot pickups or reshoots. So, you just got to edit what you have, and I think that's, to me, that feels like why some of those scenes feel very like, oh, this is happening now, that was abrupt, okay, cool, I'm just rolling with it. Like, it doesn't, things don't happen seamlessly, or just they don't feel very organic. It kind of feels like we're here and now this is going to happen and now we're going to fight and now this shootout's going to start, and that leads to a car chase. Like, it's a little all over the place. And so I would be willing to believe that it was maybe a little bit of both in this situation.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
And
like,
that's not to say that Jonathan, that it was bad directing. I'm saying that the circumstances around how this movie had to get made could have. It's not like you don't have you don't have the luxury of having enough time to do everything that you want to do and do exactly what you set out to do.
right, right. Um, we were talking about the editor or one of the editors, Gwyneth Gibby. Like I talked about last episode, how Roger Corman has always been pro, female filmmakers and stuff, and how he's always given chances to female
Yeah.
filmmakers, and he's always been a stickler for working your way up the ladder. If you look at a lot of his films, you'll see a lot of the editors eventually went on to be directors for his movies because he would see how hard of a worker they
That's
were as an
cool.
editor, and then like he would eventually give them jobs as a director. Gwyneth Gibby, who of course was one of the editors on this movie, edited other stuff for Roger Corman, and she went on to direct the Marquis de Sade, or Marquis de Sade, however you want to pronounce it, which was another Roger Corman produced movie. So I mean, she went on to do some directing as well, and like again, she was also the director of the Black Scorpion series. So he handed the keys over to her on that.
Mhm.
So you're probably right. It's probably a little bit of both on that end of why the first one is such a mess. But I digress. Watch the second one. It's a much
Um
much more fun experience.
Yeah. I did have a couple of like I said, I couldn't find a lot of behind the scenes stuff as far as, like, tidbits on the production. But I did get a couple of things. So the DVD that I got had an interview with Joan Severance. Well, I thought it was an interview, but it was actually literally just Joan Severance, like, sitting in front of a TV playing scenes from Black Scorpion on repeat in the background, and then she just kind of talked at the camera for like 30 minutes straight about everything. She kind of just went all over the place. But a couple of things that I got out of that, kind of the funniest thing to me was that they had to sew her into that costume. And it took up to 30 minutes to actually get her out of the costume. So she had to plan out all of her bathroom breaks, like, throughout
Wow.
the day. Like, she couldn't just go whenever she needed to. She was just completely stuck in that. She still owns the Black Scorpion mask to this day, which I think is super cute. And this is an unverified fact. I have tried to find proof that this happened, but on IMDb, under the trivia section, which, keep in mind, we've already established this episode that it's crowdfunded, so pretty, or not funded, but it's crowdsourced, so pretty much anybody can, like, contribute facts to some of these things. But
Right.
there
Right.
was a claim in the trivia that while they were shooting the car chase in downtown, I believe they were in LA, but I'm not 100% sure. But while they were shooting one of those car chases, the local news helicopters appeared and began covering the chase live, unaware that it was staged.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. So unverified, I don't know if that's factual.
Yeah, where they're shooting at, that shit probably like happened quite a bit, so they didn't know what the fuck if it was a difference or not. Now there's another
Yeah.
thing that I don't know the fact that if it's factual rumor or whatever. I here's my outlook on it. I tend to believe that this is 100% true, and even though here's the funny thing, even though I believe it, I don't want to believe it because it ruins it for me. But the sex scene is a body double. That's not actually her naked.
Yeah. I think that's true, and I'm glad that you brought that up because that reminds me that she in that little DVD bonus thing, she said a sentence that confused me and made no sense to me that now makes perfect sense, which she mentioned something about like, oh yeah, and like those aren't my abs, even though, I do work out a lot. Like I was working out a lot at the time, but those aren't my abs. And I was like, wait, what is she talking about? Was that not her in that? So basically, what I was saying earlier about the only like thing worthwhile in that scene isn't even her, it's a body double.
So, all right. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. The reason why I could just write it off as yeah, that's 100% fact, right? The only reason
Yeah.
that I still like say that maybe, possibly, is because I have seen Joan Severance naked and other things,
I thought that's what you were gonna say.
and I'll just say this: they found a body double that's damn near fucking identical. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I find it weird that so she did get nude on screen later in her career.
Multiple
So like I'm
times.
wondering why if she didn't I'm wondering why if she like why wouldn't she I don't know, why would
Two
she use a
things.
body double for that if she gets nude
Two things.
later?
So she was a model before she was an actress. So she's have has multiple nude photo shoots out there. Um,
Mhm.
Also, she has been nude on film before. So one of two things happened here: either that was really her, and she's just, it's just a lie that it was a body double. Or actually, you know what? I take it back. Three things. Three things. We're going to do three scenarios here. One is, and I know this from experience. I'm not going to name the actress's name, but you were on set with me. It's a bigger name actress that I've worked with. Um, she was willing to do a nude scene that was not originally in the script, but she looked at me and she was like, "I'll do this, but we've got to change the contract and the fee." And whatever else there was a bunch of red tape and an extra step that we had to take if we wanted to shoot this.
Right.
And by this point, like after all the money we'd already spent, after all the fucking contracts we'd already gone through, and all, I was like, no, fuck it, we're just going to do side boob and whatever. I'm thinking so.
Call it a day.
Scenario one is she did nudity that was not original, like that was not part of the contract. So she in turn could also
Mhm.
get in trouble for doing that because of agents and other SAG uh whatever you want to call it, red tape. So she did it, but they played it off as it was a body double. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually does. I didn't I forgot that there's like weird like union rules and like everything has to be
Right.
clearly written out and things. So yeah, I mean I feel like yeah, I mean it's I want to hear your other scenarios too. I mean, it's totally possible that a person could do a nude scene in one movie and then decide that they don't want to do it for another movie. Like that's totally fine.
Right.
But it feels like that maybe wasn't the case here.
I mean, that's scenario two is basically she had done nudity before and she just didn't want to particularly do this film for whatever reason. I just find it weird knowing how Roger Corman works that you would specifically have a sex scene with nudity and you would pay extra to somebody else. It doesn't seem like, I mean, it's not
Yeah,
as
that
that
seems
definitely
like
not
a
out of the
waste of
realm.
money.
But then there's also the fact that she wanted way too much money for the nude scene. That's the third and final.
That's also very possible, especially as being a model who's already done it before.
Right.
That's very
I
possible.
mean, Corbin could have been like, "Hey, the check that I'm writing to you is only this big. I'm not throwing an extra zero in here just for your tits when I can pay, Sally, our hairdresser, $5 and she'll do it." Um,
Dude, Sally's down. She's cool. She's been waiting for this day her
And
whole life.
Sally's got it going on. But again, it's just odd that if that is a body double, that is like immaculately close to what Joan Severance looked like naked at that point in time. I sound like such a
Yeah.
skeezer, knowing this kind
No,
of.
but I mean, I get it.
Um, so yeah,
But I mean, it is interesting, especially I mean, I think specifically what you pointed out is exactly why it's weird, which is that I don't understand why a movie on a super tight timeline, on a super tight budget made by Roger Corman of all people would get two people to do the job that one person could do. So it's like to me it's either cut the nudity and just do a sex scene with some side boob or just do it. Like don't
right,
get a body double. So I don't know.
right.
That's an interesting choice from them.
Speaking of interesting choices, let's talk about Craig J. Navias, who was the writer, who has wrote a lot of things. He did the most famous thing to me is he wrote Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, which is like, I don't know if you know the history behind that, but the movie that was never meant to be seen.
Not a ton.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go
I
into the
have
history
heard
of that.
whispers of it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into all that because I'll be here all night. But basically, Roger Corman got the rights by whoever to make a Fantastic Four movie, but the movie was never meant to be seen. It was basically made so certain people could retain rights to the title. And anyway, the movie actually does exist. It's come out through bootlegs and stuff. It's terrible, but it's also great. Check it out. Um, Craig Navias wrote that. He also wrote Lady Killer, the aforementioned Marquise de Sade movie, which all will start Nick Mancuso and John Rhys Davies. He did, of course, the Black Scorpion 1, 2, and the Black Scorpion series. I feel that, directing and editing aside, the writing of this movie was pretty fucking terrible, and the dialogue is
Mhm.
even more atrocious than the storyline. But then when you watch Black Scorpion 2 in the series, and stuff like the Fantastic Four movie, even though it's a low budget, you can tell that this guy genuinely loves a superhero genre. And
Yeah.
I don't think he was maybe able to fully flesh out what he wanted to do in the script for the first one. And again, it's such a rushed project that maybe the second one, because the
Yeah.
second one came out 2 years later, so they probably had more time and weren't so
Yeah.
rushed to do it. And I think that's where his writing kind of shined through. But as far as this movie, whew, terrible. And you know what? We've been sitting here talking so much shit about Jonathan Winfrey and about Gwyneth Gibby and now Craig J. Navias. Maybe we're wrong, Katie. Maybe it's none of their faults. Maybe when you're, like you said, when you're doing what, 13, 15 movies in 1 year, and you're rushing, you're literally on a time crunch because you've got to get these shot because they're coming out on Showtime. I mean, that's where you start sacrificing your quality over quantity. Maybe none of this is their fault.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm starting, the more we're talking about it, I'm starting to feel like maybe, a lot of, especially when we look at some of the things these people went on to work to like to do and make, it feels like this is a victim of circumstance. Like it just feels like, but I think in the end, it kind of just worked out for them because Black Scorpion, it spawned a sequel, it spawned a TV series, it's got a comic book series. So I mean, it if it was totally just total garbage, then it wouldn't even be remembered. It would have been completely forgotten. So I mean,
Right.
in that sense, I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also think that the dialogue in this movie is rough. Like some of it is just this is a little nitpicky, but this just made me laugh. At one point, I think one of the villains, I think Breathtaker says something like atoms will change on the molecular level, which is not how atoms
Adam's
or
work.
molecules are made up of atoms. So that's just not how that works at all. And I just think that's really funny. So like it's like little things like that. It's like I feel like something like that would have been caught in like a draft edit, or like it would have been caught in one of the rounds before you finalize that script. But it's just like I don't know. I mean, I don't know how fast they wrote this movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was written in like a week or two or less, knowing Roger Corman.
There was probably no draft edit whatsoever. I guarantee you, this thing was written. They looked it over. They gave it the green light, and there might have been some changes made on set, but that was probably about fucking it.
Yep, that's it.
Um,
Yeah, I completely believe that.
let's jump over to one of my favorite things to talk about. Since we're talking about crunch time, and we're also talking about you just mentioned Breathtaker again. I want to talk about the makeup effects and costuming. So Michael Burnett, who I have had the pleasure of meeting, super fucking nice guy, and I feel like he's an unsung hero in the effects world. The guy has worked on some of my all-time favorite things: the Masters of the Universe, the movie, The Blob, the '80s one, the Chuck Russell one, the Swamp Thing, the series, the Willies. He did like 6 episodes of the television series Monsters. Universal Soldier. He's still working to this day. He just most recently did Jujitsu with Nicolas Cage, and he's always
Oh,
done really great work. I've seen his work in person. The dude's phenomenal, and the mask for Black Scorpion looks fucking awesome. However,
yeah,
he also made the costume for Breathtaker. And while here's the difference between me and your general audience. If if I was making this movie, okay, and I hired somebody to make a costume for Breathtaker, and I'm on set for the first time, and somebody comes out behind a curtain dressed like that, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to smile and be like, "Fuck yeah! All right,
yeah.
let's do this. This is great. This is great." But but it's not. Honestly,
Yeah.
great. It's not a great costume. I would have fun with it, of course, but of course, I would probably be making more or less a 1966 Batman style thing anyway, which is what this technically was. But I could, me myself, I could tell by looking at it that there was no way in hell that Michael Burnett had enough time to fabricate and create something really fucking cool, because I know the dude can do really fucking cool, and I think that was a huge time constraint type thing with that with the makeup effects and stuff.
Yeah. I thought overall it looked cool, but I'm with you. Yeah, I think it could have been a lot cooler, especially if they just had more time. What I liked but wish they'd shown more of, because they only showed it from one weird angle, is that when they finally, when Breathtaker is finally dying, uh Black Scorpion comes over and pulls his mask off like he's Darth Vader at the end
Right.
of the original trilogy. And he's like, I mean, he kind of even they've got him made up almost like Darth Vader, like
Yep.
right before he dies. but he he looks kind of cool. Like they show it only from this like one weird angle, but his skin looks like it's almost like stretched out a little bit on his face and kind of like pinned into his mask in some way. I don't know, but he looked like, I thought that part looked kind of cool, and I would have liked to have maybe seen that a little bit more head on, but I
Right.
imagine maybe it wasn't that good of a makeup job, and so they shot it from a weird angle to hide it. But I don't know. I think the design for these villains was kind of cool, and I
Yeah.
think you can see that get even more insane when you get to the sequel. Just looking at some of the pictures of
Oh
them,
yeah, the
like they look
sequels
definitely way
characters are
more
great.
over the top.
Absolutely. Now the thing is, like, again, I didn't mind so much the breathtaker costume just because I like campy shit like that. You know what I think the biggest problem is?
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is whoever the fuck it was they had wearing that costume, because that person looked like a fucking potato.
Yeah, yeah.
Like that person
He's
was
just
like,
kind of like robotic and
well, like the person was kind of portly, kind of like the body was kind of shaped like a
yeah,
potato,
yeah.
and it kind of had lanky arms. And like here's the thing, like if you're going to cast somebody different in the costume, you know what I'm saying? Like, all right, so Casey Simasco played Dr. Goddard for 3 minutes. So from that point forward, it was
Yeah.
somebody else in the costume, and only when you take off the mask is it Dr. Goddard or whatever again, right? So just do
Yeah.
the Master Blaster thing from Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I mean, they had a big hulking guy take off the helmet and it was somebody else, or again like Darth Vader. David Prowse, who was a fucking bodybuilder, was in the costume. When they took off the helmet, it was fucking Billy Joe. Anyway, why didn't they just get um, Rick Rozovic, who played Darcy's dad, to be in the costume? Because that dude is like physically fit, like buff guy. He
Yeah.
should have been in the fucking costume, which would have made that arc a little bit cooler. That the guy playing the guy that supposedly killed him is the guy playing, Dr. Goddard as Breathtaker or whatever. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
He'd have been like physically imposing, but instead, again, it looked like a potato in a costume.
Yeah.
That's what it made, and it made the costume
Well,
even
I
that
think
much
that's
more
what's
ill
so
fitting.
funny. Yeah, well, that's what I think is kinda so funny about it, is that, like, this villain is just such a nerd. Like, he's just, like, I mean, he's I was gonna say he's just, like, got asthma and is just, like, this, like, little, like, nerdy little kid who's just like, "Oh, I want everybody else to be as as weird as I am." But, like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I guess he doesn't have asthma. He's been shot in the lungs and that's why he can't breathe. But I don't know. For some reason, like the fact that he is not physically foreboding is kind of hilarious to me.
It's so
But
weird though.
I am with you that I think it would have overall maybe been a little bit more effective if they had made him almost like this super cop, or not super, or like a RoboCop, like he's been rebuilt into this like badass like mech suit or something. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I feel like they could have done a little bit more. You also like don't really see enough of him. Like the villain is in that movie for maybe all of 5 minutes total on screen.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. Well, that's another thing. I'm gonna keep talking about the sequel, but the other one, like, there's the fucking villains are everywhere, like constantly. It's such a villain
Yeah.
centric movie. So I think it was definitely a case of they learned from their mistakes for sure on the first one and knew what to do on the second one.
Yeah, I think so.
So Katie, go ahead and give me your final thoughts on Black Scorpion.
Yeah, so I think, I try to have fun with everything that I watch for the show, and just every movie, any movie I watch in general. I try to stay positive. That being said, this was not my favorite. I was not super into it. I don't think I'll watch it again. Like there were parts of it that I thought were really funny, and really like interesting, but I think overall it's just got a weird feel to it, and it just, like we've been saying, the last 20 minutes or so are just such a mess, that it kind of just, I don't know, it just didn't leave a great taste in my mouth by the end of it. So not my favorite, but you know, I consider every movie I watch is some sort of learning experience in one way or the other. So even if I didn't like it, I gleaned some bit of info from it in one way or another. So I I don't know if I would recommend it. I think if you haven't seen this movie and but you are super into just like this kind of era of movies and this kind of genre in general, then put it on while you're folding laundry or washing the dishes or something. But other than that, I'm glad that it has a kind of a cult following a little bit. I think there is a small, like, small-ish population of people who really, really, really love this movie. So I think that's cool, but not for me personally.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. It sounds weird. I'm not gonna recommend the first one so much. There's certain scenes and moments that I would recommend checking out. But as a whole, maybe not so much. However, I full heartedly suggest and recommend Black Scorpion 2, and especially Black Scorpion the series. And if you don't feel like sitting through an entire
Hmm.
season, there was only one season of the series. But if you don't feel like sitting through an entire season, they actually took 2 episodes from the series and edited them together as a movie. And then they did another one like that where they took like
Oh,
three
cool.
episodes and then it together as a movie. So if you can track those down, check them out. Again, the actress that played Black Scorpion in the series, Michelle Lintel, is fucking gorgeous. Um, Fun characters and
Hmm.
villains in that as well. So yeah, I again, there's moments and scenes and stuff, certain little niche moments in the first Black Scorpion that I recommend checking out. I don't recommend the entire movie, but yeah, I would recommend Black Scorpion 2 and again the series.
Yeah. Yep, I feel pretty similarly. I think I'm gonna have to check out the sequel now that you've recommended it. But Matt, we have made it to the end of this episode, and now we've made it to your favorite part of the show, which will actually have something to talk about this time, which is how do you rate this on the TNA meter?
Dude, so we might have blasted this fucking this is the first movie I think we've actually blasted almost the entire episode. Um
Yeah.
However, this baby on the TNA meter, I my rankings always depend on certain moments, certain things. Sometimes it'll be quantity over quality, but on movies like this, I'm actually going to go quality over quantity because I don't know if it's Joan Severance or not or a body double. I know the sex scene is bad, but the nudity is not. That is immaculate. Chef's kiss.
That's fair.
Also, the stripper that's in the weird cowboy redneck bar, who evidently is
Yeah.
their only stripper because like
The
we
only one that's ever performing all day.
ever all day and night because there's like 3 scenes that take place in that place and she's the only one stripping. I'm not complaining. I don't know who she is because she is not credited in that movie, but that also is chef's kiss. I, with those two things combined, I'm not Captain Planet. I'm giving a 10 out of 10 on the TNA meter.
Oh, snap.
We haven't
Okay,
had
I
this high
think
of a
that might be
rating.
our that
I don't think we've had this
I
high of a
don't
rating
think
since
so,
Howling
yeah.
2. I think Howling 2 was more.
Yeah, actually, that it is more in Howling too, but it would be fitting that, like, the worst movie we've talked about so far, it has one of the higher TNA ratings.
And like I said, it's quality over quantity for this movie. Like let's face it, a lot of
Right,
movies of this era and of this caliber and budget usually like they know they've got to put a nudity in it to help it sell or help with viewership. So they'll throw in like sometimes not the best nudity, but they put enough of it in there to make up for it. This movie, there was like, hey,
right.
quantity not so much, but quality, yes sirree. So 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Well, that's all we have for this episode of Video Express. We want to thank our sponsor, Lunch Meat. Lunch Meat VHS is your number one destination for the appreciation, celebration, and preservation of VHS and video store culture. Check out their website at lunchmeatvhs.com and explore their store full of old school horror goodies on VHS, apparel, and much, much more. You can also follow them on Instagram at LunchMeatVHS.
Thanks for listening, y'all. If you have thoughts about Black Scorpion or just Roger Corman movies in general, if you want to suggest a movie for us to talk about on here, or if you just want to drop by and say hi, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Video Express Pod.
Yeah, so Katie, before we wrap things up, I just got to tell you, if you thought sitting through Black Scorpion was a treat, you just wait. You just wait until the next
Oh no.
episode because, ladies and gentlemen,
Oh
next
no.
next we are celebrating the life of Julie Strain, who sadly passed this year, and is one of the most titillating actresses of my era. Who I enjoyed all of her films for reasons we know. We'll be spotlighting her this coming month, on the next episode, and the one after that for Julie Strain month. And I'm sure the TNA meter is going to go off the charts for those episodes. So,
I
Katie,
can't wait.
are in. You're in for a treat. But guys, until next time, just remember: please be kind, rewind, but most importantly, just be kind. I'm Matt,
And I'm Katie.
and we will catch you guys on the next episode of Video Express.
Bye bye.